How do you diagnose a faulty TXV? What is a TXV and what is it used for? Today we're learning more about TXVs. You're watching Taddy Digest. This is HVAC Tips for Technicians. I'm Tad. Let's get started. Today we're going to go on a service call and we're going to replace a bad TXV. And you're going to be able to see the before, the pressures and temperatures, and then the after. Before we go to that service call, I want to show you a few things. Right here we have a package heat pump. And this package heat pump has two TXVs. One for the indoor, one for the outdoor. We're going to look at that in just a moment. So take a look. This TXV is a bolt-on. This TXV is a sweat-on. I want you to see the difference. This one has to be brazed in place. This one can be bolted. We've got the equalizer tube. This one has to be bolted on, and the same equalizer tube here, this one has to be brazed. Then we've got a bulb. These are metering devices, and their job is to meter the refrigerant. When the liquid refrigerant comes into each one of these TXVs, you have a pressure drop, and you have a temperature change. So if you have a TXV working properly, whenever it's being used, you should have a temperature difference from this side, the inlet, to this side, the outlet. You know, a filter dryer, you should never have a temperature difference. If you have a temperature difference across a filter dryer, that's an indication you have a restriction. But for a TXV, you should have a temperature difference because it should be metering the refrigerant. And if this TXV closes, the more it closes, the more it restricts the refrigerant from going through it, the greater the difference of the pressure and the greater the difference of the temperature. So now, let's take a look. On this package heat pump, we've got two TXVs. We got one here, and this is for metering the refrigerant for the indoor coil. And guess when this one's used? The indoor TXV is used during the cooling operation. And then during the heating operation, we've got another TXV. And this TXV meters the refrigerant into the outdoor coil. And this is the outdoor TXV. During heating, we use this TXV, and during cooling, we use this TXV. We're going to go to a service call. We're going to work on a split heat pump. But before we do that, we're going to turn this unit on cooling, and we're going to check the temperature difference between the indoor and the outdoor TXV on each side. Then we're going to turn it into the heating mode so that you have a good understanding of what you should see. We're going to energize the cooling operation first, and we're going to do that by connecting the red, the yellow, and the orange, because on the York unit, we need to energize the reversing valve for the cooling mode. I've got those three wires tied together. Now I'm going to reconnect the power. We're going to wait for the delay. During the cooling operation, we know the indoor TXV is being used. So we should have a temperature difference across that TXV. The outdoor TXV, we shouldn't have a temperature difference. So I'm going to wait. This is going to come on. Then we're going to go to our checks. So now we're going to check the temperature difference across the outdoor TXV and the indoor TXV. Since we're in the cooling mode, we're using the indoor TXV. We have a liquid coming from the condenser moving into the indoor TXV during cooling, and this TXV should have a pressure drop across it and a temperature difference. So let's check the outdoor, which is not being used. All right, what's it say? 66.9. Let's go to the other side. What do we got? 66.9. Now let's go to this side of this TXV, and what do we got on that side? We got 67.2. Now let's go to the other side of this TXV, which would be right here. Let's see if I can actually get it on there and get a reading. So it was 67, but it's dropped. So look at that. still dropping. Wow, so that's we're gonna wait till it stabilizes. So we're at 54 degrees. So 54 degrees. We were at 67. So we're at about 13 degrees of temperature difference. So we know that this indoor TXV is being used, right? Let's take a quick look at the pressures. 120 on the low side, 13 or 12 degrees superheat, and then 231 on the high side, about 15 degrees of subcooling. These are the pressures for cooling. Now let's turn this heat pump into the heat mode instead of the cooling mode. Now we're going to de-energize the reversing valve. So we're going to take that orange wire off, and you're going to hear that reversing valve switch. And I've got the red and yellow. And then we're going to wait about 10 minutes, and then we'll show you the temperature difference on the outdoor TXV now. Now that we're in the heating mode, we are going to check the outdoor TXV, which before in the cooling mode was not being used and there was no temperature difference. Now I'm going to take both probes, I'm going to put them across the TXV, and we're going to wait just a moment, and we're going to see what the temperature difference is. Now we're in the heating mode. Let's check across the indoor TXV, which is no longer being used. 72 or 71.9, and then on the other side 75. So 72 and 75, 3 degrees before it was 10 degrees. Now let's check across the outdoor TXV, which is the one being used. We'll just take this, put it here, and then we'll take the other one and put it here, and we should have a temperature difference across this TXV. And we do. 76 and 62, 61. So wow, we've got a 17 degree split. We got a 20 degree split across this TXV. Before, we didn't have any split. So now we're using the outdoor TXV instead of the indoor. Pressures 137, and then high sides 386. Let me give you a few more tips, and then we're going to go to the service call. A few tips for you when you're installing TXVs, especially bolt-on. Make sure you install the Teflon washer. There's a Teflon washer that goes right here, and then on the other side you got to have that Teflon washer. If you don't, you're possibly going to have some leaks, and you don't want leaks. When you're mounting the bulb on a horizontal run, a line, make sure, of course, it's touching the copper, it's got full contact, but you want to mount it at 10 or 2 o'clock positions. If you're mounting this bulb on a vertical run, make sure it's at least 8 inches away from any bend, 90 degree or elbow, and make sure that when you mount it, you make sure that you have the bulb with the tail end up. And also, you want to make sure you wrap this. So when you mount it on the line, the bulb has to be wrapped and insulated so that you're just picking up the temperature from the line that the bulb is mounted on. These are a few tips. This is the equalizer line. We went over that. Let's go to the service call. Let's learn some more about TXVs. If you like the video so far, hit the like button, subscribe, smash that bell, ding, so you know what I'm doing. Let's go. Heat pump that works in cooling, but does not work in heating. Today I got a good one for you. I'm going to show you the unit operating and cooling, and then I'm going to show you the unit operating and heating, and then we're going to talk about possible causes, and then we're going to repair this equipment. Here's the outdoor unit, and you know it's a heat pump because, well, we've got an outdoor TXV, and there's the reversing valve. In the heating mode, the outdoor unit uses the outdoor TXV, and in the cooling mode, it uses the indoor TXV or metering device. Model number is a 36, so it's a 3-ton, and then serial number 1, and then looks like 1, it's 2011. So it's about 13 years old, and it's got a defrost board. So that's another indication that it is a heat pump. All right, let me go turn the unit on cooling. Standing pressures, 198. 198. And this is how I got my gauges hooked up. I got the low side hose on the true suction line, and then the high side hose on the liquid line. So I'm going to be able to measure the low side and the high side. All right, let's turn it on cooling. All right, turning the unit on. Oop, whoopsies. Cooling. All right, cool on. Unit's in cooling mode. You can see the fans running. We got our pressures on our low side, 112. High side is 290. Looks pretty normal. Superheat's 19. That's pretty good. Good. Suction line temperature is 57. And then liquid line temperature is 77. Then we got subcooling of 15. So 112, 290. That's pretty good. If you look over here, we've got our probes on. That's how we're getting the suction line temperature, 56. And then liquid line temperature, 77. So right now, it's blowing about 56 degree air in the house. And the pressures look pretty good, right? If you look over here, saturation is above 32, it's 37. These are pretty good pressures. It's about 75 degrees outside right now. So it's not gonna freeze up. It's running, it's cooling the house. Now, let me turn it into the heating mode, and you'll see how everything changes. Now, let's go to the heat mode. All right, heat mode. Let's go up to about 82. And then the heat should kick on. Waiting on the delay right now. Standing pressure 182. And I just made one change. I moved the high side hose from the liquid line to now the hot gas vapor line, which is the larger line. Why did I do that? In the cooling mode, we have got low pressure vapor coming from the indoor coil, which is known as the evaporator during cooling, and that low pressure vapor is coming into the condenser. This is the condenser during cooling mode. In heating mode, it's the opposite. We have got a hot gas coming from our condenser, which is no longer our condenser, it's our evaporator. We've got hot gas coming from our evaporator in the heat mode going into the indoor coil, which is no longer the evaporator, it's the condenser. So during cooling, this is rejecting heat. During heating, the indoor coil is rejecting heat. Hope that makes sense. So now it's in the heating mode. You can see our low side is below 0. So it's in a vacuum. The high side is 187. If you look at this temperature here, hot gas line temperature is 71. This line's supposed to be warm, a lot warmer than 71. This line, 72, is the same as this one. So what could be causing this issue? I want to check the outdoor TXV. I want to check the filter dryer. So I'm going to pull the power, and then I'm going to take this lower panel off so I can check it while it's running. Because look, saturation -10, suction line temperature and liquid line temperature are the exact same. So there's no temperature change happening, right? There's no temperature change. I mean, we're putting in 70 degree liquid and we're getting out 73 degree or 72 degrees. So in cooling it works great, but in heating it does not. Let's take this lower panel off. Let's check across the filter dryer. Let's check across the TXV. All right, so what are we going to check first? We're going to check this side of the filter dryer. 70. Other side of the filter dryer. 70. Then that's one side of the TXV, right? There's the outdoor TXV. All right, it was 71. Now let's check the other side of that TXV, which is that line right there. 71. So 71, 71. There's no temperature difference across the filter dryer. There's no temperature difference across the TXV. This TXV is open and it's not metering like it should. You should not have, you should have some temperature difference across this TXV. So we're going to take this out, we're going to replace it, and then we're going to recheck our pressures. All right. After recovering the refrigerant, I am taking my tubing cutters and taking this TXV out. Then I'm going to use some nitrogen and I'm going to blow through and see if anything comes out. And that's what the old TXV looks like. And there's one little equalizer tube here. I just cut this with a pair of cutters and I'm going to braze this, or unbraze this fitting, I mean. Old TXV, new TXV. There's an in and an out. And the way we're going to install this is just like this right here. Because during the heating mode, remember we're sending hot gas from the evaporator. Was the condenser during cooling, now it's the evaporator. Sending hot gas into the indoor coil, and then we're sending liquid back into the outdoor coil. And we need this to bring that liquid in through this side and then out through this side. So I'm going to install it, but before I do that, I'm going to wrap it in water so I don't overheat it. So my rag is right here. All right, I'm just going to show you how I wrap this valve here. I just go around each line. That way I can keep the heat from getting to the valve. That's how I do one rag right there, like that. I gotta swedge this end of the copper, that way it'll fit over that side of the TXV. And the reason that I'm bent the copper to point down is so that there's no shavings that get inside. All right. All right, I'm going to take this smaller line, which is the equalizer line, out of the suction line, because we need that out of there. All right, there we go. Now we got the TXV in place. See? And I also pulled it out from behind the coil. That way I can get to it. Make sure you keep it wrapped. Make sure you got some solder, and make sure you turn up your torches. Because a lot of guys won't have the heat right. And if you don't have the heat right, you're not going to melt that solder. And you can see now I'm heating that solder. TXV is successfully brazed in, even the equalizer line. Got to mount this bulb right now. I am going to add some nitrogen. About 300 pounds, and then I'll soap test. Soaping up the connections. Just want to make sure I don't have any leaks, which I don't think I do. Got it on 298. We'll wait, let it set for 30 minutes, and then we'll use our vacuum pump. Pull a vacuum, and then I will add refrigerant. Pulling a vacuum, I'm going to leave these panels off so when we start it back up, you can see the temperature difference across that TXV. I am putting new refrigerant in. It holds 7 pounds, 8 ounces. setting up the scales. Scales are set up. Need to bleed the air out. Air is bled out. We need to zero out the scale, and then we're going to add through the liquid line. Here we go. Heard the pressure switch click. We're adding. I'm going to try to add all 7 pounds through the liquid line. We'll be back shortly. So we have added 5 pounds 6 ounces, so we're about 2 pounds shy from full charge. I just switched my hoses around so that I can be measuring correctly in the heating mode, this heat pump. Here's the standing pressure, 186. Let's plug in the power and let's see the results. It's on, it's in heating mode, and I'm going to turn off the gauges and we're going to see what happens. Does it go into a vacuum? Did we fix the problem? $95 and $290 or $300. Wasn't that going into a vacuum before? I'm pretty sure it was. Let's check across that TXV now. Let me get some light. Got some light. Let's check this side of the TXV. Looks like $81, and then I need to move this so I can get clamp on the other side. 79, 78, 77. I'm going to put the rest of the refrigerant inside, and I should be able to do that because I'm adding it through this line here, true suction line. Let's get the rest of that added, then we'll make some checks. We got close to the factory charge. I need to get these panels on so we get accurate readings. We got close to the factory charge inside the system. Low side is 99, high side is 379. Let's check our hot gas line now. It was 70 degrees, now it's 140. So that's doubled in temperature. Let's measure across the TXV. $74, $75, 75. Right up here. There we go. 74. 73. Alright. Panels back on. Low side pressure is 102. High side pressure is 378, and it's stabilized. Hot gas line's 143 degrees. That is hot. And then liquid line's 82. So now we got a temperature difference, you know, from our liquid line to our hot gas line. And if you look at 80 and 140, you know, that's 60 degrees. Now it's almost 70, 150 degrees. If you see your head pressure go up, you know, 400, 450, 500, check your airflow inside, because that indoor coil gets hot. You have to have the right amount of airflow to keep your head pressure from going too high. When it goes too high, then that's hard on your compressor. So be careful out there. Hope this helps.